Hello, everybody. Wow, what a fantastic feeling and what an honor to have you all here with us today. I'd like to start by sharing a story with you. Many years ago, my children and I met Colonel Chris Hadfield at a book signing event. He's a Canadian astronaut and the former commander of the International Space Station. He told the memorable story about the first time in 2001 when he went to install Canadarm2 and did a walk around the International Space Station. He was the first Canadian to do so. It was a big moment for him and his country. There were to be cameras recording his every move, and there was an expectation for him to give a speech. He had written a speech and worked on memorizing it for the occasion. When the time came and he set his foot out into space, he was speechless and in awe of his surroundings, finally being able to realize his dreams. So he forgot his entire speech, and all the words which came out of his mouth were, wow. Wow, I have the same feeling today. I am humbled and excited to have you all here with us as we celebrate becoming an official Verein in Germany. Believe me, if you knew a thing or two about the process of getting there, it is a significant accomplishment. Professor Dittus, Chantelle Dubois, and Professor Iring, what a joy and an honor to meet you. On behalf of our entire team and community, we thank you for supporting us. I would like to give a shout out to Thomas Kuch from the DLR and Georg Schmitz from the German Canadian Association for helping us reach the Canadian Space Agency and connect with Chantelle and her team. Women in AI and Robotics Germany was founded with a mission to take action on reducing the gender gap, specifically in artificial intelligence and robotics. We are doing so through our programs developed by the women in our communities. Mentorship, education, and startup accelerator programs are at the core of our mission. We are also strong believers in international collaborations and promoting youth exchanges. While there are some fears of the unknown surrounding technology, especially AI, the possibilities of doing good are endless, and that is where the focus should be. If the people working on the artificial intelligence and robotics products and services do not resemble the society from a gender, ethnicity, and abilities perspective, there will always be an imbalance. It inspires and motivates me personally to see firsthand how many people of all genders and backgrounds are eager to support this mission by their sheer presence and engagement. I wanted to find a way to harvest all the positive energy into specific, measurable goals. With as little as 1 hour per week of mentorship, we can help turn someone's life around. We can positively impact society. Some people have asked me why I am doing all this. What is my personal motivation? Perhaps it stems from our culture to give back to our communities where volunteering becomes the norm from an early school age. Currently in Germany, there are many sister organizations and women on a similar mission to promote women in technology and leadership who are making an impact, such as the Hamburg-based Hacker School, Mercedes-Benz Swan Initiative, the Panda Leadership Organization, and She Transforms IT. We aspire to be like them and collaborate with them. I am delighted and overjoyed to see women succeed, shine, and achieve their full potential. I am often the first to know when someone lands a new job, gets into a university, or has a problem they need help solving. That is the greatest satisfaction. I feel that it is an honor to be in a position to serve our communities, which with many thanks to technology has become global, and I am excited to kick off our partnerships with many associations in Germany who are a major contributor to this cause. Before I introduce the team, I would like to share a quote from Melinda French Gates, who recently said, and I quote, Fighting for gender equality is something I am passionate about and dedicated to. I'm committed as ever to tearing down the barriers that keep women from living up their potential. The unfinished business of empowering women is urgent work that can only complete together. Let's keep going, unquote. A heartfelt thank you to the several hundreds of community members who have joined us, who believe in us and support our mission and cause. I am proud and excited to introduce our core team, including our board members. A heartfelt thank you for all their dedication and contributions, for continuing to support one another throughout the pandemic and the many ups and downs of life, especially those superheroes who are working and homeschooling by day and volunteering by night. You are my inspiration. Okay, so let's see, who do we have here with us on the call so that we can introduce them. Okay, so I will just call out your names and I hope that you're here. And if you are, it would be nice if you could please say hi and wave. So first we have our Vice President, Lioba, our Vice President, Alex, Advisor, Suzanne, our Treasurer, Esther, Advisor, Lena Prumer, and Advisor, Gernot Fink. And the extraordinary woman behind the scenes for this event, Maria Bargavi, Mihaela Harshil. Fantastic. And let's see, who else do we have on the team to call their names, and if you could say hi, that would be fantastic. Nella.
Hi.
Hello. Sania.
Hi.
Hello. Barassi. Barassi.
Hi.
Hello. Karina.
Hi.
Hello. Who else do we have? Christina.
Hi.
Tina.
Hi.
Kashmira.
Hello.
Pelin.
Hi.
Regini.
Hi.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And Lioba, I will hand off to you now.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Sheila. Yeah, it was indeed such a joy to just, see the association grow. It took on quite a momentum quite quickly. I think we were all almost overwhelmed at some point at the amount of support and we received. So yeah, it's such a joy to see it grow, to finally be able to say we're an eingetragener Verein. We've started this association officially now. So yeah, it's a really joyous moment for everybody, for all of us who made it possible. So today we have 3 speakers, and we're really, really grateful and honored that they took their very valuable time to, start us off with a big bang. And we will start off, as you know, with Professor Dittus. So giving women, so we were wondering, why should we start off with such a prolific male speaker, and we thought that giving women visibility is obviously a major aspect of female representation, of participation, and it's one of the core principles of us. And we're actually, as Sheila already mentioned, we're dedicating a lot of time to showcasing female expertise, ranging from really senior level to quite a junior level, to people, giving them the chance to start off, giving a lecture at our accelerator program, which Sheila ran. But today we also want to show the whole range. It takes a whole society to change the society. So we want to show the whole range of possibilities of people being able to enabling a fairer society or fairer developments in AI and robotics. So it's really with an enormous pleasure that I can introduce our first keynote speaker, Professor Dittus. He's the DLR Executive Board Member for Space Research and Technology. And since 2011, so for a good 10 years, he used his position in power. This is very to actually promote female leadership. He founded the DLR 5th workshop, so women in leading positions für Frauen in Führungskräfte. He's not only talked about female empowerment a lot, but he's actually paved the road by implementing some very real measures towards female empowerment and implementing very concrete change. And tonight he will tell us about his motivation for being such a dedicated ally, and perhaps let us, look into some lessons learned along the way, and maybe tell us what's his background for his motivation to being such a strong ally. So thank you, Professor Dittus.
So I have to thank you very much first for the kind introduction and my person. I'm very pleased to become invited to here, but I'm very honored to speak as a man to you, all the women. But it's not what I like to say, because I'm really positively surprised how much women are sitting here and talking about a field in technology and science, which is definitely one of the fields where we have only a small fraction of women working for us. I don't know exactly what is it a cultural problem. We did a lot of studies about that. I think there might be many reasons why this is like it is. And nevertheless, it's still a problem. I think it's a worldwide problem. I don't think there's any society in the world which so far has established real equality between men and women, in particular in science. So it's an urgent thing to do it. And and this is what you asked for, my motivation. When I entered DLR in 2008, the first time, I became an institute director and had a young team and also a reasonable number of women as well. So I was not really aware of the problem we really have in a engineering sciences society as DLR is. But when I became a board member 3 years later in 2011, I became aware of one of the biggest problems our society, at least in Germany, maybe in all of mid-Europe, we have. Due to some investigations we had to do, because there were critical questions on the Senate board, I asked for the numbers and the figures, how many women we have in leading positions in science teams. And the number was just 2%. And I find, I mean, we are in the 21st century, and it's a little bit shaming number to say, okay, a society like ours in Germany and DLR, which is a German-based large research facility with 10,000 co-workers now, has only 2% of women in leading positions. And the problem is, I guess, if we talk about the leading positions and there's only 2%, my first question was, can research be excellent if we include nearly half the number of people able to do this job? And that's not the case, of course. Science can never be excellent if they're only done by men, and they, by them, select the best persons. So we need all the people. And it was my first motivation to say, okay, this has to be changed. This has to be changed rapidly. But this is a problem. To change a society rapidly is nearly impossible. Nevertheless, everyone can do in his position whatever he can do or she can do. And mainly this has to be done by men, because we are the majority in all the leading positions still up to now. After 10 years in the board now, I can say we succeeded in some way, but only in a small way. Now we have roughly 7%, 8% women in leading position. So it's a long way to come to what we call equality. And that's why I like to congratulate you, because it's a brave undertaking to do this. And I think you have to run against a lot of walls, a lot of problems. And many of these problems are made by men, for men. And many of these problems are not taking care of problems women have in life, because all the science careers started early and can only be unbroken if there are no children on the way, so to say. That's what we realized in our early workshops, and we did half-year workshops with all the interested women we could find in DLR. And at the end, we did a lot of things. I will not list all the things we did to change things, but something we cannot change directly because it's regulations by law. These are regulations within the international frameworks, and many problems are created by universities. We always think universities are free places, liberal places, but there's a lot of conservatism on universities, in particular in Germany, as I recognized. Although it had been universities, for example, in Switzerland, they already accepted women for study in the 19th century, and it was a free country at that time. People went to Switzerland, and in particular women, to study there, and it was all very attractive for men to go there. It's all forgotten. If we go now in our universities, there are not many teachers, female teachers, and this has to be changed, in my opinion. And my second motivation came later. That's a funny story I also like to share with you. It was, I think, 2 years later in 2012 or 13, when I had been invited to Saudi Arabia. I had to go to Riyadh and had been guest of the King Abdulaziz's City of Science and Technology. And I knew the director, who was a former PhD student at Stanford, where I met him. I mean, he was a postdoc there, and I met him there the first time, and then he invited me to come to Riyadh, and we had some discussions on projects, and it was the first time that I had been in Saudi Arabia, and everyone warned me and said, look, this is so conservative, this country. Women are not allowed to drive cars. Women have to be dressed with this burqa. And indeed it was a strange country for me. All the black-faced great creatures had been women, and we couldn't see their face, and it was blocked for us. And one day he told me, and he was the director, he was a prince of the Saudi Arabian king's family. It's a large family. I think they have 2,000 members like that. Nevertheless, he said to me, come with me, I show you my large center. And there was one of the floors, it was closed for men because only women worked there. It was completely closed for women, for men, and it was the only place women could work. And he said, look, this is a problem for me. We are a small country. We have 20 million people, not more. We are large, and we need a lot of people, in particular for science, to develop the country. But I don't have the women because they are not allowed to work. So I have to bring them to work in some way. I have to fund them because we need them all. It's a problem for me to find the men, but it's even more a problem to get women because they have no chance in this country. That was what he said to me. And I said, what do you do? And then he said, yeah, the only way I have is I send them to US. I give them a lot of money, make them to professors, and then they can work there. But I think without women, we cannot do the job here. We have the number of people are too small for the science work we have in mind to do all that work. We have no people, and the only way is that we bring them in a society which is more equal in the chances. So far, if you go to Saudi Arabia today, it's definitely far behind us in mid-Europe, that's for sure. Nevertheless, they made a lot of progress. A progress which might not be seen and can be criticized also up to now. It's not only the fact that women now can drive cars there. This is a small thing, I guess. The major thing is they changed the family structures there in a lot. And we have to recognize that, because if we think back to our societies, and that's my third motivation, we had 60, 70 years ago in Germany, a lot of legal regulations which forbid women to work. My mother, and this was a big problem of her life, had to stop their study as a chemist when she became married. The family urged her to do so. And it was a society need to do it. This was in the 50s, 1955, 1956, like that. And she stopped to be a student and finished their education as we would say an assistant in a chemistry lab. But it was all her life a big problem. And it was Germany who stopped the law that women needed the permit of their husbands to go to work only in 1979. So it's not that we can say we are far, far in front of these countries we were laughing about maybe sometimes. Our societies changed a lot in the 70s and 80s, the 90s, and continuously, hopefully now. But we have a long way in front of us to come to real equality. And that was my motivation, in particular, my mother's story. She really suffered from that, that she couldn't finish her study. And I still have her books here with me, and I read in all these textbooks she gave me. And they are very old textbooks now of today's thing, but this also reminds me to her problems she had in all her life. And this is, I think, the strongest motivation I still have to fight for equality rights. And you should do it. You should go on, be brave. Sometimes it's not easy, I know. And I wish you all the best to do though. And also a nice workshop here, international workshop in this framework. I think is a good start. And build up your networks. That's important. This helps a lot. And whenever I can help you, call me. Maybe I can do more. You need powerful organizations, science organizations. They can help you, and they have to be urged to help you sometimes as well. So I wish you all the best, great success, and not only in the private life, but also in your science career or in your engineering career. All the best. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, back to you, Leo. Thank you so much, Professor Dittus, and not only an inspirational leader, but also a very good storyteller. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Leova, back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Dittus. And thank you for all your efforts at DLR as well. So as I mentioned earlier, tonight is about showing the wide range of people enabling gender equality and gender equity in AI and robotics. And so I'm very pleased to say that we'll continue with a very exceptional female role model. Professor Veronica Iring is an outstanding researcher who, among many other achievements, just won the Leibniz Prize, which is Germany's most prestigious science award. And she will give us a quick introduction to her work, because it's just so interesting that we had to have that as well, because she's using artificial intelligence techniques to better understand the Earth system and climate change. So I think a wide range of really interesting topics here. And she's also kindly agreed to introduce us to her vita as a female scientist. So it's a really big honor to have you. Thank you very much, Professor Iring.
Thanks very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thanks very much for the invitation, and it's a real honor and pleasure to speak here at this important event for women in AI and robotics. My name is Veronica Iring, and I'm a climate scientist. I'm head of the Department for Earth System Model Evaluation and Analysis. Let me just say. And analysis at the DLR, the German Aerospace Center Institute of Atmospheric Physics here close to Munich. And I'm also a professor of climate modeling at the University of Bremen. And around 4 years ago, I started to exploit AI in climate science, and I will show you some examples why I think this is extremely promising. And so at that stage, I have also founded and are now scientifically supervising the Climate Informatics Causal Inference Group at the DLR in Jena. So I was asked to give a brief introduction to my career and my research in climate modeling. And let me start briefly with some background in climate science. So climate change is real. The atmospheric concentration of CO2 has increased to unprecedented levels. As you can see in this view graph here, the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has now been rising to above 420 ppm compared to 320 parts per million in the 280 parts per million in the pre-industrial. And accordingly, we see a strong continuous warming over the past decades. And so the warming of the climate system is unequivocal, and the human influence is clear. That was already concluded in the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment Report in 2013. And indeed, I could show you multiple complementary indicators of a changing climate, but I leave it like this. I want to introduce you here to the observations. Now, this is what this is currently then complemented by climate models. So as soon as you want to go into the future, so you want to assess how climate possibly develops under various scenarios, for example, if CO2 continues to increase or it starts to get mitigated and declining, then what is happening? For this, you require climate models, complex climate or Earth system models. So these are the most sophisticated approaches to simulate the climate system. And here you see a little schematic. So basically for the atmosphere, you have like grid cells, and in each of these grid cells, you calculate state variables like temperature, precipitation, and so on. And these models are based on physical laws. So we have quite some trust in these models. They are internationally coordinated as part of the coupled model intercomparison project CMAP that I was chairing in the last years since 2014. So we are using for projections not only one model to assess the uncertainties. We have multiple models, and this has really grown substantially, this activity over the last years and decades, and there are now more than 40 or 50 models participating in this initiative worldwide. And then the output is collected, and we can provide projections for different scenarios in the future. Now this is shown here. On the left side, you see, let's say, the 2-degree scenario where CO2 emissions are reduced and actually are declining, and even negative values in the second part of this century. And on the right-hand side, you see when CO2 is further increasing, a business as usual scenario. So here you can see over the entire globe a substantial warming up to 6 or even more degrees. So this is really a future we need to avoid. So these climate models that clearly show that a reduction in greenhouse gases is urgently required. And we need to act because we need to avoid further warming, which is associated with major risks for this world. So limiting to 1.5 or 2 degrees warming above pre-industrial values is an international priority. That is an established fact, so we know more CO2, more warming. Nevertheless, these models are associated with uncertainties, and these uncertainties stem mainly from clouds and carbon cycle. So you can these models, I showed you these grid cells. The grid cells are, let's say, between 50 and 150 kilometers, and you can imagine, if you look outside, that a cloud and the cloud processes occur on much smaller scales, spatial scales. So somehow you need to represent the statistical process of a cloud in these state variables in the grid boxes, and that causes uncertainties across the models, which is indicated here, which is actually then rising towards the end of the century. But all models show that if the CO2 is increasing, that's the business as usual scenario shown here on the right-hand side, we have to expect massive further warming. So nevertheless, for mitigation, it's important to reduce this uncertainty. And that's where my research really focuses on. I'm improving the understanding and accuracy of climate projections through process-oriented modeling and model evaluation. And we focus here on first combining climate models with observations and to better understand the Earth system and to project climate change. And here we confront these models either from CMIP or our own simulations with observations, and then we assess the quality of these models so that we can improve them over time. And we also develop innovative methods to constrain these uncertainties in the projections that I have just shown you, including methods from AI, and I will come back to that. And also related to, digitalization and big data, we are developing since many years now as a PI and lead the Earth System Model Evaluation tool that facilitates this comparison, because these data, they are getting really high in volume. We have 20 to 40 petabytes now collected from CMIP models worldwide. And these are very complex. They have to represent many different climate processes. So evaluating them and analyzing them is a challenge. And this tool helps in this. And here we are working towards really professional computing and including considering provenance and reproducibility. And this is really a kind of a success that is more widely used now, including in the IPCC reports and with a growing user community and developers. And third, we are using or developing machine learning techniques to improve climate models and analysis. So then this is what we do in the DLR space program, and we also contribute here to digitalization. But as I will show when I turn to my career, I've also worked on other sectors. So we are applying these improved data sets, the methods and the models for reliable climate projections. And here we can then do an improved technology assessment. For example, I have worked substantially, as I will show, as part of my junior research group on the impact of ship emissions on atmosphere and climate and human health. And we also provide input we provide policy advice. And this in our case, or in my case, mainly comes through contributions as author on these climate assessments. I'm an author on the IPCC climate assessments since 2007. And I have also contributed to the second greenhouse gas study from the International Maritime Organization as part of this junior research group on ship emissions. So that as an intro. So I turn now to my career, because I was also asked to talk a bit about what, at least from my perspective, what have been important developments that could lead to me working now in a really successful and interesting team on exciting science. So I start with my early career and work and family. I will briefly also touch upon, as I think this might be important for some of you. So I did my diploma in physics at the University of Erlangen and solid state physics in 1994. And at that stage, and then I was absolutely sure I want to do a PhD. And at that stage already, the IPCC assessment report in 1995 concluded that the balance of evidence suggests a discernible influence on global climate. So climate scientists already back in 1995 concluded, oh, wow, there is a human influence, and think about how long it has taken for action to be taken. But this has really attracted my attention, and I thought that's great. I can combine my interest in theoretical physics and climate science. So I went into the field of climate modeling. And I did my PhD at the University of Bremen already on my favorite topic of combining models and measurements. And indeed, in that time, I could participate in a campaign with the Falcon to compare our own model that I have developed with another student. And it was a box model at that time, and compared that to these measurements from the Falcon aircraft, which was very exciting. Now, I should say that as it happened, I got both my kids during the PhD. So my son was born in 1997 and my daughter in 1999, shortly after I've defended my my PhD. So I remember that at that time, my professor Klaus Künzi told me, I went into this office quite early and I said, oh, Professor Künzi, I'm pregnant. What am I doing now? And he said, all I want is that you don't give up and you finish. So I did. That was great. And he was a real supporter and I appreciate that. So then I took a maternity leave until 2000 and I am working at DLR since then. I started as a postdoc, and I just want to point out that I have really early on in my career, took on leadership role in big international research activities. So these were like voluntary activities as part of the World Climate Research Program. I founded the Chemistry Climate Model Validation activity, which then contributed massively to the scientific assessment of ozone depletion. And I also won, which was really a career start. I won in the first Hammers Association scholarship for young investigator group, where I then could work with a small team on the impact of ship emission on atmosphere and climate. So one thing I here want to say, getting back to this work and family issue. So I worked half-time in between 2000 and 2003, and I really felt this is like not sufficient. So I felt this was like I was always below the critical time, and I was always like in my car and getting back to the kids and so on. So I really felt, okay, that wasn't quite it, and I'm working since then officially 100% and probably more. So I think that maybe that's a first thing. Maybe as things have changed, like 75% would have been maybe is maybe a better choice. That could maybe be done with the partners both working 75% or so on, or as I did. I mean, there are many ways and we are all different, and there are different ways of a career, but that has worked for me. And yeah, but I wanted to mention that this was really, I felt that with a 50%, I was kind of undercritical to publish really and get, the level of scientific joy that I wanted to enjoy. Now, let me briefly excurse this, and you have heard from Professor Dittus just now, and I really want to thank him now, take the opportunity to thank him for his engagement in supporting us women at DLR. I think the first step here to mention was, I now point to what I think was important. The heading this young investigator group really helped me expanding my skills. But I also participated in these workshops that Professor Dittus mentioned, and as he said, action is really required. So we reached, and with Professor Dittus on the lead, we reached quite a few things. We met nearly 2 times a year. And one of this is that actually the young investigators group are now formally established and a bit more a part of the including the disciplinary budget and so on, which are all quite important developments. So thanks, Professor Dittus, for your engagement. It's really appreciated, and I think all the women in DLR, they are well noticing that. Okay, so let's go to mid-career. I continue to lead large international research project, and Professor Dittus also already mentioned, so I really think this is important to expand networks, and I had the chance through these projects that I could really work internationally quite early, and that's amazingly helpful, and scientifically output is increasing when you build up these networks. So that's an important point. I also worked abroad, and this obviously is difficult with the kids, but I just took them with me when they were something like 9 and 11, and I put them into the school. My husband had to stay at home because he was working, but he came around visiting once. So we were 4 months in Boulder, and I worked abroad, and I can just encourage, this has worked out very nicely. Kids have learned English, and I had an exciting scientific time, and I can just sometimes it works, just take that has worked brilliant. And also I contributed, as I was saying, to these IPCC climate assessment reports, and I think being visible and learning professional working is also important. Now I don't want to say that I want to say that really working in a team is what I enjoy now in this mid-career life, and in particular supervising students and also teaching at university. I think something that really helped. Now the good thing now is that I also have an exciting future, which is I find extremely nice, because I have also invested a lot in proposal writing and in participating in leading roles in many EU projects. But now, as we are talking AI here, I have submitted a proposal for a synergy grant on understanding and modeling the Earth system with machine learning as corresponding PI, together with my co-PIs Markus Reichstein from the MPI in Jena, Gustavo Capsweiss from Valencia, and Pierre Chantin from Columbia University. And we were successful. So this grant will support the work of our interdisciplinary team, and we will combine machine learning techniques with physical models of the atmosphere and the land. And we are convinced we can improve climate models and the analysis in this way. And I've also won the Leibniz Prize this year, which I'm of course extremely honored and happy about. And this comes along with scientific funding that will enable PhDs and so on, which is just exciting for the future. Okay, so since we are AI, do you still have like a few minutes, Leo? Leo?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
Okay. I can't hesitate then to show what we are, show you one example, at least what we are doing with AI in climate science, so that I show you how promising this could be. So we are developing, we are improving parameterization of climate models. I told you already, now here's our grid books of the climate model, and the cloud, okay, it occurs on much smaller scales. So somehow we have to represent this, and typically this was a physically based parameterization. But however, this really leads to large uncertainties we need to get urgently rid of. So our idea here is that now with improved, increased computing power, we have high resolving models available, which you see here. So these are actually models that can resolve a cloud, let's say 2 kilometers or even below, but they are extremely computationally expensive. So you can only run them for a few days or months. But what we do is now we coarse grain these high resolution models that we have available for a specific region, say, to the grid cell of the climate model that is around 100 kilometers or so. And then we put these state variables as input into a neural net, and we learn, and the tendencies that we have from the coarse grained model, we learn with this machine learning, with this neural net. And then we are planning to replace the original parameterization in the model with this machine learning algorithm. And I just show you one example. So we have already done this for cloud cover, and here it's just 4 days. So this is the ICANN model, the German climate model. That's a cloud resolving model, and here's our neural net. And I don't want to say much about this, but just telling you that that these results demonstrate that we are able to replace the the original physical parameterization. And then we hope that we are going to be much better in terms of representing clouds in the future. I will skip this example because it's too complex, but I just want to say that we also work on improving the analysis and constraining uncertainties with machine learning models. And with this, I would like to thank you all for your attention. I'm extremely convinced that there is a big role of AI in monitoring, understanding, and mitigating climate change. Thanks very much for the invitation again. I wish you all good luck, and I really appreciate this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Really, really appreciate your presence here with us today, sharing your journey with us, your professional journey and your personal journey. It is inspiring, and your work is definitely inspiring. I will be Googling a lot of this stuff later today to educate myself even further. So thank you so much. And perhaps if you have anything to share with us at a later time, a link, some documents for those of us who are curious, I think that would be really helpful for us to learn more about AI and climate change, and your work specifically. I think it was definitely quite fascinating. We will take one question for the interest of time, since I know that you need to leave soon. So there is a question from Suzanne that she says, thank you for the inspiring talk. The impact of AI on the climate is being discussed both ways, positive and negative. How do we make sure we push this balance to the positive?
Oh, I think we just give the facts, you know, we do good science and put it out, and then it will be done. You know, I'm totally sure that AI can help in many ways. It can't solve all the problems, but I mean, it's definitely worth a try. I mean, that's there are very many promising examples. I have just shown one, but there is potential also to use AI to, there are also already several successful other examples. You can use AI to make the models faster, so you can run them at higher resolution, so you can resolve your processes better, so you can have a better model. Or you could do like output compression, because these data are so huge, you know, then you can use output compression like video compression to use AI. You can make the models better through what I have shown, or you could improve the analysis. That's also very important. So I think there are several successful examples. But on the other hand, working on this topic with my PhD students now since like 2 years, of course, there's frustration along the way as well. There are challenges like, would these generalize to different climate, for example, in the example I have shown. So once you go to a warmer climate, would your machine learning parameterization still do a good job? Actually, we don't know. We are researching on this question, but I think generally the AI has huge potential, and it will also fail in some other you know, occasions, but I wouldn't be worried about that. That's pure science.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think maybe we have time for one more question. Thank you, Professor Dittus. This question is for Professor Dittus. What would be your suggestion on how to attract more men to support gender equality?
Okay, I think, and a lot of thing is education, of course, and unfortunately, man, this is in women hand more than in men hand. That's what I'm always wondering. Why okay, it's not a fair statement, I think, because there's a lot of the society in, of course, but it's on you as well, of course, to train your children to accept that and to see how this could work together. And I think there's a lot of what you can win. It's a question of development in generations. My thesis is that if someone is older than 25 years, you cannot change his mind all the rest of the life. So whatever we do has to be done, or whatever we have to educate, we have to do earlier. So I think it's an education problem. Also, yeah, this helps a lot. We have, by the way, we have a lot of men now. They are absolutely willing to go the same way, and they attract women to bring them in the group because they have recognized that it's much better to have a balanced a gender balance in your group. So this helps a lot when this is our daily life. I think this is it needs time. A generation is 20 years, and in each generation maybe we have a 5% change. So you can imagine how long it needs to come to equality. This needs another 50, 60 years maybe. Nevertheless, it's improving all time.
Yeah, well, I hope that we are in a position to expedite it if we join, hands and forces, not just locally but globally, because this is a global problem.
It's a global problem.
So I think that we must join forces so that hopefully it does not need another 60 years. but given that what I have seen specifically firsthand with our group was having women and also men as allies, I think that the future looks bright. I'm very hopeful from what I'm feeling every day, from the encouragement that we're getting from the global community as well as the local, is that there are many people who are eager to make a difference, to educate, but we all need to do that together collectively. And I think we're making good progress.
Yeah, we're making good progress. You're right. Sometimes, but it's, as you see, and I think we agree, it's sometimes slow. And Corona didn't help us really, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely blame Corona for years to come for many things. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Dittus. Very much appreciated.
I have to leave you because I have another appointment now, and I promised to go. So is that possible that I go out now and step out now?
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Also, Veronica, thanks for.
Thank you also. And
you in
as
Bremen,
I mentioned
soon,
in the beginning, I also have another meeting at 7.
See you in Bremen, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Once travel allows.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks everyone and good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Okay, and now I'm very much excited to introduce our next speaker, Chantal Dupois. She exemplifies being a role model and giving back to the communities through outreach programs. As her team has mentioned, she's a brilliant engineer, drives rovers by day, and explores AI and augmented reality by night. I'm looking forward to learning more about her journey and her projects at the CSA. Chantal, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. So I just want to make sure, do we see my screen? Is it all good?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so I'm following quite the duo of speakers. So I'm sort of at the other end of the spectrum in terms of career. I'm early in my career, but I think it's still a valuable opportunity to share my journey for anyone who's sort of, a few steps behind me and at the juncture of trying to decide what comes next. So I exist at a couple of interesting intersections. I'm a woman. I work in the space sector. I work with robotics, and I've also started working with AI. So I'll explain to you how I got to that point because it wasn't by design necessarily. All right, so it begins with my dreams of space. I had always wanted to work in the space sector. And I started university at the University of Manitoba in this city called Winnipeg in the center of the country. When I first started at the University of Manitoba, I actually started studying chemistry because in my mind, NASA needs, rocket fuel scientists, and I figured I could be that rocket fuel scientist. But I learned at some point it wasn't quite for me. And at some point I transitioned. I transferred to engineering, first in electrical engineering. And then once again, I changed my mind and then finally settled on computer engineering, which ended up being the right fit for me. So I like sharing that detail because I think it's really important that while you're figuring out what comes next for you, it's okay to change your mind a couple of times. It's not a bad thing. And for me, it turned out to be a really good thing. So when I finally transitioned to engineering, I started getting involved with the university's nanosatellite design team. So we built 3D CubeSat nanosatellites to compete in a competition. And that was sort of my first introduction into space engineering. While I was involved with that group, I then got involved with the Space Generation Advisory Council, which is an NGO based in Vienna, Austria, that interfaces with the United Nations and works with young professionals and students from around the world to get their input into the space sector. So in 2015, I actually interned in Vienna, Austria at the headquarters of the SJC. I learned only enough German to order a copy. That was like the essential for me. But it was a very difficult language to catch on in just in a few months. And my time with this organization culminated with me managing one of their events in Colorado Springs, USA. And this is a photo from that. So Dr. Jan Werner, who I think at this time was Director General of ESA and previously was the chairman of DLR, he was quite a strong supporter of this organization and supporting young people in their career development. So I thought that was a really cool picture to show here with the AI Women in AI and Robotics Germany organization to see that this collaboration between Germany and Canada, it exists in many ways, and this is just one way. In 2017, I got my first internship at the Canadian Space Agency. So I first was hired to work with the Lunar Exploration Analog Deployment Project. So this was a prototype lunar rover, and the objective was to perform an analog mission for a lunar sample collection. So this was in partnership with the European Space Agency and actually with a specific office in Germany. So once again, there's a Canadian-German connection here. So I did a lot of the software integration for this system, and the deployment took place in 2019. Also in 2017, we were ending our astronaut recruitment campaign in Canada. So we were hiring 2 new astronauts for our astronaut corps, and I was part of the final selection committee. So I was one of 5 people. I provided sort of the young insight into this committee on who would make a suitable astronaut. So that was a really incredible opportunity. Finally, at the end of 2019, I finished my engineering degree. So I graduated with an undergraduate degree in computer engineering. And then I was hired at the Canadian Space Agency full-time in the engineering development program. And my primary role since then has been as an avionics and software systems engineer for the Canadarm3 project. So here's where I came from, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing now. And before I kind of get into Canadarm3, I'll explain to you the Canadarm family. So here's a family portrait. On the left is Canadarm1. So this was the first Canadarm robotic system that we developed. And this was deployed in 1981 on the space shuttle. And so here you see an image. It's really cool. It's Canadarm going to grapple with the Hubble Space Telescope, I believe at this point, to perform some repairs. On the right, you'll see Canadarm2, also with Dexter. So this was deployed in 2001 on the International Space Station, and it's still in operation today. However, you'll see that there's a 10-year overlap in the two. And so we got this really cool photo at some point, which is Canadarm1 and Canadarm2 working together to move, I think it's a metal pallet off of the ISS onto the space shuttle. So that's super cool. It's the first high five in space by 2 robotic arms. And at this time, Canadarm1 was being controlled by Chris Hadfield inside the space shuttle. So pretty cool. So what's coming next? Next is Canadarm3. And so this is going to be similar to Canadarm1 and 2. It's going to be a little bit smaller. And it's going to comprise of two parts. There'll be the exploration large arm, which is the larger robotic arm, sort of the format that we're familiar with, but there's also going to be an exploration dexterous arm, which is going to be a smaller arm that can repair the large arm or attach to the end of it to act as an extension of the arm to make an extra long arm. So we envision that this will be part of the Lunar Gateway, which I'll get into next, actually. So the 5 W's of what we're doing here. So what? So we are building a space station that's going to go around the moon, and Canadarm3 is going to be part of that space station. Who? Well, this is led by NASA, and it's also has involvement from the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, and JAXA. Why? So Canada and the European Space Agency and NASA, and I think at this point 20 other countries who now have space agencies, were all part of this global exploration roadmap with plans to eventually go put humans on Mars. However, on the way to Mars, there's a lot of things we need to do first. So one of the main objectives in more recent times is to return to the moon. So that involves putting a space station around the moon, doing lunar exploration, and returning humans to the surface of the moon. This will be an opportunity for us to demonstrate our technologies and demonstrate our plans, and then taking all that lessons learned and then eventually moving on forward to Mars in the 2030s. So this is sort of the roadmap of where the countries are going while working together towards this shared goal. Okay, so where is this lunar space station going? Well, it's going around the moon, but more specifically, it's going to be in a near rectilinear halo orbit. So this is a highly elliptical orbit around the moon. It's going to take 1 week to orbit completely. And at its closest point to the surface, it's going to be about 3,000 kilometers, and at the furthest, about 70,000 kilometers. So it's a very stable, energy efficient orbit. It's an interesting point for science, for communications, and also for surface operations. And then when? So the initial phase is 2024. This is going to be to support the boots on the moon objective of putting an American astronaut on the surface by 2024. So at this point, only the most essential parts of the gateway that are needed for this objective will be sent up. So that includes the power and propulsion element, one of the habitable modules, the lunar module, and the human landing system. And then in 2026 is the sustaining phase. So this is one of the modules that will support the long-term operations of the gateway will be sent up. So this is going to include the international habitable module. Sorry, that word's hard for me for some reason. IHAB is the module that's being contributed by European Space Agency and JAXA. The airlock will also be sent up, and then also Canadarm3. So we're quite excited about that. At this point, Canadarm3 is still in phase A, so it's still very early in its development. Now, I mentioned that the long-term objective is to send humans to Mars, and we're working towards this goal together among many space agencies. So part of the objective for Gateway is to make it as autonomous as possible, because once we start sending things to Mars, real-time control or real-time communication with the ground probably isn't going to be possible anymore. So we need something that can be autonomous. And so this autonomy is sort of a part of the Gateway mission to prove that it's possible. So this is optimizing how crew time is going to be spent. One thing I should mention here is that unlike the International Space Station, the Lunar Gateway is not meant to be crewed year round. It's only be probably 1 month out of the year. So when we do send crew up to the Lunar Gateway, we want their time to be optimized so that they're not doing configuration or maintenance of the gateway. So autonomy is going to help with that goal. It's going to help with increasing our independence from the ground. And as I mentioned, it's a proof of concept for our deep space missions to Mars and beyond. So if I put into just one sentence, we're making a space station that is reliant, responsive, dependable, safe, and lets crew focus valuable time on science. And as mentioned earlier, we want to talk about how AI can do good things for us. So we're not talking about this guy. You might have seen this movie and be familiar with HAL 9000 on an autonomous space station. This is not what we're making. So yeah. So at this point, I just want to define, to kind of explain where autonomy and AI come into play on Canadarm3, we first have to define what those two mean. And depending on who you talk to, there's very sort of academic definitions used for these two, but for us, we chose like a more functional definition. So first, autonomous is the execution of a task without human intervention or supervision. And then for artificial intelligence, it's algorithms that mimic human cognition, in particular perception, reasoning, learning, planning, and decision-making. And this definition leaves it open to what flavor of AI we can use on the Canadarm3 system. Additionally, looking closer at autonomy, so we're speaking about it in terms of high-level decision-making, but we're not talking about autonomic reflexes. So these would be, feedback control loops or things that are more traditionally part of classical robotics. This is sort of taken for granted that this is going to be part of the robotic system. It's not necessarily part of the autonomy system. So making Canadarm3, it's going to be autonomous. It's going to be powered by AI. Why and what does that look like? So I think the easiest way to kind of convey that is to talk about or to look at how self-driving cars are sort of categorized. So for self-driving cars, and I have a graph here that shows different levels that are sort of widely accepted, we start at level 0. So at level 0, the self-driving car, or I guess at this point, just a car, the car is more just a tool, and the human is sitting in the seat. They're doing the perception with their eyes, they're doing the decision-making with their brains, and they're doing the control with their hands on the wheel and their foot on the pedals and the brakes and stuff like that. So that's level 0. When we're looking at what's possible, what we're probably going to be doing for Canadarm3, we consider this more of a mixed initiative. So yeah, level 0 is manual control. We're manually controlling the robotic system of Canadarm3. When we move up every step, we're trying to relinquish more control of the system from the human operators, either on the ground or on the space station, to the system itself. So the Canadarm and all of its computation systems on board the space station. So at level 1, we're kind of like increasing that. And I'd say maybe at level 3, we're going to get more like what we think of right now is self-driving vehicles. So vehicles where you sit in the seat and you kind of take your hands off the wheel, and it's dealing with lane changing, it's stopping, it's braking, but you still need to be in the seat to put your hands on the steering wheel if something goes wrong. And the full autonomy is at the very end. So this is where we imagine that a self-driving car is one that you just sit in, you just tell you where you want to go, and then you lean back and you read your newspaper, and once you're there, you don't have to do anything. It's just going to drive you to your destination. So for Canadarm3, this would be the entire Canadarm3 system on board the space station. It's doing all of its own operation. It's doing all of its own sensing and decision-making, and it doesn't need the ground or the crew to do that. And it's going to maintain and configure the gateway on its own with available information. However, at this point, where we're trying to introduce this type of AI and autonomy to space robotics, we're encountering sort of unique systems engineering challenges, and I categorize them into 4 different categories. So there's safety. So in space engineering, we don't like things that are unpredictable. We like things to be very clearly defined, very predictable, something that we know for sure how it's going to act and how it's going to come to the decision it comes to. And this is sort of the antithesis of AI to some degree, because AI traditionally is non-deterministic. So we're exploring ways to overcome that. And some of those ways include a crawl, walk, run approach, where we slowly introduce an AI system alongside a traditional system. And then after we gain confidence in the capabilities and behavior of the AI system, we'll slowly kind of relinquish control to the AI system, sort of like how we have this self-driving car sort of levels of autonomy that we progress up. Another sort of approach is a black box approach. So this is making sure that every AI system or every function that's going to be powered by AI is self-contained. So it's only doing one thing. We know exactly what the inputs are going to be, and we know what the outputs are going to be. So for example, if we have an AI system that's sensing if there's an object in its way or not, that's all it does. And we know the output is either going to be, yes, there's an object in the way, or no, there's an object in the way. And if the output's cat, then we know that something's wrong. So that's a black box approach. And then also, ultimately, anywhere we introduce AI, there has to be a net gain in safety and functionality. We're not just introducing AI for the sake of it. We need it to be very purposeful. Configuration management is sort of the more boring side of it, but this is really important because it's sort of For example, when we train an AI system with data, changing that data will ultimately change the model of the system. And so managing the sort of like version control of software, we need to version control our data and the models that we're using. Verification and validation is really important because we have limited data in this specific environment. So finding meaningful data or meaningful sort of placeholders for that data is something we have to look into. And then training and computational resources. Traditionally, space hardware is about 10 years behind terrestrial hardware. So probably the computers that we have on board Canadarm3 aren't going to be as powerful as the ones on the ground, or if they are, well, there's mostly limitations in terms of power and thermal limitations as well. So we can't really put that stuff on Canadarm3. It's going to be a little bit more lower level than that. So to make up for this, likely what we'll have to do is train our models on the ground and then upload those models to the computers on the Canadarm3 system in space, and then it'll deploy it, but unlikely will it be learning on the go on board the space station itself. So in summary, Canadarm3 is at the intersection of space engineering, robotics, and artificial intelligence, and this is mostly a new domain. And also, I want to mention that recently Canada announced that we will be deploying a rover on the lunar surface in the next 5 years. And this is still very early in development, but we imagine that AI will play some role somewhere in that too, either on the ground, possibly on board. And this will likely be in terms of computer vision, path planning, or enhancing the ground segment. And then finally, introducing AI in this domain, it's creating novel systems engineering challenges that we need to overcome as well. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Chantal. This was quite interesting. And I think many of us on the call here today come from a software engineering, AI, ML expert background. And I think we have a lot of questions for you, two of which are from the team. So, yeah, a lot of questions are popping up here as well. Senia, are you on the call here with us? Let me just give you, where are you? So she, okay. I just allowed you to get on here. Go ahead, Senia.
Hi.
Hello.
So, first of all, it's very
Speak
nice.
up a little bit. Your voice, the volume is low.
It's very nice to meet you virtually. It was a very nice presentation. I kind of am a space nerd myself. Yeah, I bought my Star Trek shirt to wear today.
Excellent.
I wanted to ask, so I don't have a background in space technology, basically. So how does someone, and since I'm not a student anymore, I don't really have access to, for example, student projects or internships or something. So how can someone who is already a graduate or say an engineer, early career, break into the space industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the way to look at the space sector is not that it's its own, like it is its own special domain, but at the same time, it's a domain that actually demands other specialties that come together to work together. So for example, before I knew I was returning to the space agency, I was thinking, because I wanted to work in the space sector and I wasn't sure what options were available to me. And if the CSA didn't work out, one of the things I was looking into was going into like a parallel domain. So for example, I know that robotics is really important in the space sector and AI is really important in the space sector. And so those were probably areas I was going to pursue careers in. And then later down the road, most likely, I'd probably find a way to break into the space sector because then I'll come with expertise in robotics or expertise in AI. And this applies to a lot of things. So if you're an expert in, PCB design or optics or any of that sort of stuff, these are things that are used in the space sector. So it's just making sure that whatever skills you have, it's parallel to what's needed in the space domain. And then at some point you can come in and kind of use that expertise and that experience to break into it. But otherwise, at the beginning of your career, it's mostly just keeping an eye out for like any opportunity available to engage with the space sector. I think that also networking is important. So there's a lot of, opportunities to, like conferences, a lot of them are virtual right now. So it makes really good, it's a good opportunity now to like get to those conferences, meet people, talk to them, find out what they're doing, and start seeing like where you can find a niche that can like get your foot in the door. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question from Christina. Thank you for sharing your inspiring journey. Could you share a nugget of wisdom for someone on a similar path? Something that you might have had to learn the hard way?
Oh man. I learned a lot of things the hard way. So I'm trying to think of like which one is the most like probably broadly applicable. It's being open-minded about the opportunities because, for example, I didn't actually think I want to work in robotics before joining the space agency. It wasn't on my radar. But then I was given the opportunity to take this internship. I took it and it ended up working out really well for me. And I think if I didn't have an open mind about it, then I wouldn't have found that out. So I think like I didn't learn that lesson the hard way. I learned it kind of like, well, I guess like a good way, the hard way, because I learned the hard way that I liked robotics. But yeah, keep your mind open about the opportunities, even if it doesn't look exactly like you want to do. If it's a step closer to your goals, it can get you closer, or it can end up being something you love.
Okay, great, thank you. We have another question from Maria Wolf. Dear Chantal Dupois, thank you for the talk. When and why did you start to dream of space?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny question. I think, so when I was young, my uncle was he was kind of like a weird guy, and he really liked this radio show called Coast to Coast AM. And I don't know if anyone here is familiar with that. It was a goofy American show where this host, his name was Art Bell, used to interview people who like thought they saw Bigfoot or were abducted by aliens. And I think just like for me, like being a young kid, I was like, yeah, that's so cool. Like aliens must exist. And I was really curious about like extraterrestrials and stuff like that. So I think that kind of started this sort of like interest in like, are we alone in the universe? At the time I wasn't asking that philosophical question. I was more curious, like, are there aliens I can meet? And so, yeah, I think as I got older, my interest in aliens and extraterrestrial became a little bit more pragmatic, and I just became more interested in how humans can expand our presence in the universe, how we can, I really want to see what's on Mars. I think that's incredible. We haven't sent people there yet. Like we've sent robots there, but imagine what it's like for a person to be standing there and look around them and see this planet and know that they're on another planet. So I think that was sort of the evolution of my interest in space. And then it just became natural that I eventually want to work in the space sector.
Great, thank you. And we have another question from Monica. She is from the Vancouver School District and a good friend. Thanks for being here with us, Monica. So she says, thank you, Chantal, very inspiring. I am in Vancouver, BC, so I feel very proud of seeing Canada representing. I work with elementary students. What would be your advice to little girls to follow their passion in STEAM?
I think that the earlier that they see themselves, or the earlier that you see someone in a role that you like that represents you. So for young girls, I think just seeing people who are women also in these roles, and they kind of just take for granted then, like, yeah, women can be engineers or they can be scientists. So I think that's the most powerful way, is just to make sure that for them it's normalized as early as possible. Because yeah, seeing that has like such a big subconscious influence, I think. And it kind of, the earlier you can remove that sort of bias towards, them not believing that's where they belong, I think the bigger impact that can be had for them earlier on. So just, I guess, engaging them, letting them know that there's, women who are astronauts, who are scientists, who are engineers. And then, if possible, introducing them, if you have people in your community that can come speak with them, I think that helps a lot.
Great, great. Yeah, I also believe the same, that the more, you can't be what you can't see. So the more that they see and the more that they're exposed to women in these various professions, then the more inclined they are, oh, okay, I can do this too. And it's not, something that's only meant for boys. So yeah, definitely, what you're doing is really great. We have a question from Karina. Was there a thing you thought about aerospace industry before you joined that later turned out to be wrong?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Aliens?
Yeah, we haven't made contact with aliens yet, and we're not sure if they're out there. But it's interesting because I think there's been a lot of stuff coming out of the US recently about government departments investigating UFOs. But anyway, that's not happening in Canada. I guess I mean, it moves slow. And I think that when you're outside of the industry, you're like, why does it take forever to do things? Why does a space mission need to take 5 to 10 years before it can be launched? And I think when I was a student and before I was actually in the industry, I thought that, this is crazy. It's all red tape. But then you get there and you realize, wow, no, it's because you're doing something really hard and you need to be careful every step of the way and you need to validate everything. And, if we had a timeline of 1 year to build and launch Canadarm3, it would be I don't know if we could do that. It makes sense that we have to work on these larger timescales because it's such a step-by-step process. We're involving international partners and that increases the timeline because there's so much coordination to, happen before you can actually get to the step of building the thing. So I think that was sort of the thing that I learned fast and hard was, yeah, the timelines exist for a reason. And we're moving really fast, relatively speaking, but it's still quite slow if you're not familiar with the reason why.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we have someone's hands up. Melton, did you have a question or perhaps a comment? If you have a question, Melton, maybe you want to post it into the Q&A. And there's also someone by the name of Manasa Sachidanand. Maybe you can post your question. Okay, here's a question from Manasa. Hi, I am an aerospace engineer working on implementation of object detection algorithms using GPU for space exploration. Do you have any suggestions for obtaining images for training the models? Ooh, this is a very specific question. How do I fine-tune my performance? Yeah.
That is definitely very tough and a question that we're trying to answer now, even for our own systems. I was sort of looking into, how to use simulation to train something. And there's, challenges with simulation to real transfer learning. So that's a whole domain in itself that I'm not sure I can advise a lot on. But I think, and I don't know if this applies directly to your specific question, but there are data sets out there. For example, MDA in partnership with CSA, NRC, which is another government department, and also AMI, which is an artificial intelligence institute at the University of Calgary. They recently developed this really big, sort of really interesting data set called the Trail data set that's on Kaggle right now. And their objective is they put it out there for anyone to use, and they want people to use it to develop collision avoidance algorithms or systems. So that might be something you'd be interested in depending on what your system actually needs. So that's my recommendation for now, but otherwise we're still exploring that for ourselves because a lot of the data we have it's protected because it belongs to, to the government of Canada and to our private industry. So there's not a lot out there that is shareable very easily, for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. And another question, the questions keep coming. We have a very curious audience. So this one is about, you mentioned safety concerns about AI. And if you observe or face hesitation or challenges about the adoption of AI in space technologies.
I personally don't, because I see AI as being a tool. It's very ubiquitous now, even if we don't realize it. And the same with the space, space technology. We all take for granted that we have GPS that, does everything from validating our financial transactions to guiding us, the right direction to wherever we need to go. And we take that for granted. And that technology was on the cutting edge, at the time that it was deployed a long time ago. I remember when I was younger, you had to buy a $400 GPS system to put in your car, and now it's just on my phone. For AI, I think it's sort of the same, where it's a tool that every day it's sort of taking up more space in our lives. So, for example, my learning app that I use for learning French, it's AI powered, and I don't need to know. I don't need to know that. I could easily use the app without knowing that at all, but it's part of the system. So I think AI is a tool that's becoming really important, and it's becoming sort of like a needed thing in any system. And eventually this percolates to the space sector or to any safety critical sectors in the world, like mining or anything like that. So I think eventually it just becomes so like accepted because it's ubiquitous that it will have a place in the space domain. And then at that point, it'll be less questioned. Being sort of one of the first groups maybe pushing it out kind of makes us one of the first to have to like deal with these challenges, but we're not going to be the only ones. For sure, there's going to be more people following us or more groups.
Okay, great. Let's see, there's one more question. What would an ideal work environment for a young female engineer look like?
So I'll talk a little bit about what I like about my work environment. I get to work with a lot of different levels. So I get to work with my peers who are also junior, that's in the engineering development program. And we're doing like a lot of peer-to-peer learning every day, even if they're not working on the same projects or in the same, domain specialty as me. They're people I learn from every day. And then also having more senior individuals to learn from. And that's been really important. So having both this sort of like, I guess, sandwich of like the junior engineers I learn from and then my senior engineers. And then just being in an environment that's very supportive. So I'm learning a lot. I'm early in my career and my supervisors are all very like patient with me. They'll answer my questions, but they also challenge me. So they'll give me responsibilities that are increasingly, more demanding on me. And they kind of give me that space to grow and be challenged and be put out of my comfort zone to grow. So I think those things have made my particular environment really positive. And I think those are things that would also make other women's work environment positive too.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we are almost done with the questions. I'm just looking to see if there's anyone left who has any questions, and also to give the team a chance to come up on the stage, because some folks could not make it due to the Zoom issues. So I'm kind of searching to see who have we missed in the early part of our webinar, so I could have them here with us. I think I'm onboarding a lot of the Kashmira. I think I saw you earlier too, but I'm just having anyone who is from the team to come up stage, promote them to panelists. I have a team of 31, Chantal. I am so proud of them. We have such amazing people in the community who they have really worked their bum off to coordinate and plan and bring things together. And this is the beauty of what we're doing, is that just every little bit counts. Every little bit is helpful, and it makes a difference, even though you may think it doesn't. But just 1 hour, the smallest little thing, it can make a big difference, and that's what I encourage people to to engage and to participate, and not to be worried. I mean, I have women on my team who are moms, they have kids, they homeschool their kids during the pandemic and so on, and yet they make the time to do some good, and it's so admirable. So let me see, woohoo, a lot of people who didn't make it earlier are now here with us. Helena, woohoo. Hello. Yeah, Larissa, yay, you made it. And we have Dittus here with us as well. And Dittus is from Ethiopia, and she has been helping us create the mentorship platform and helping us with managing that. And there is a team of women in AI who is very much interested in this topic and are active. And we hope to engage with them further as we move along and establish ourselves in our organization. So we're hoping to work with them more closely. And who else? Oh, I think I got you on the stage too, Monica. And we have Suzanne. Hey. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. You made it. I'm used to the beach background that you normally have. You're not at the beach today.
I swapped computers and the picture isn't on there yet.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Or you just didn't want to make me feel jealous. Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, Chantal. This has been very, very, educational and inspiring. We had great speakers from Professor Dittus to Veronica and yourself, and great audience with, fantastic questions and engagement. Is there anything left before we call it today? Okay. Yeah, we got a gallery view. Let's get a screenshot. Did we get a screenshot, ladies? Oh,
We are already live in Instagram, but I took some.
cool. Okay, let's not forget that. And okay. Well, thank you so much. It was really wonderful to have you all here with us today. And don't forget to follow our social media platform to be in the loop of the latest. We do have another great event coming up on the 22nd. More details to be announced soon. And Stuttgart launch is on June 29th. So save the date and hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much. Take care, Chantal, and say hi to back home.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. So good work, everyone, and good luck on the next things to come.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Chantal. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.